off again.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Wednesday night, which means it's retro night, and I'm joined by a panel of Newcastle fans to look back at games between Newcastle United and Burnley. As always, we will do the players that played for both teams at the end, and some celebrity Burnley fans, and the lads have got to guess them, and then putting together a 1 to 11 of players that played for both teams. So without further ado, I'm going to revert back to type. I'm going to move George back to the front. And George, we'll start with your first story about Newcastle against Burnley.
Well, I'm going off piste a little bit tonight, so which won't surprise us too much. I noticed in the chat last week and a couple of weeks before, one or two people have been saying, "Why don't you pick your worst team?" So after the lads said it last week, I did. So here goes. Here's my worst team. I've tried it. Well, it wasn't difficult to keep it modern because I wanted to pick players I'd actually seen, not just players I'd heard about. So here goes the worst Newcastle team that I've seen. Goalkeeper was a toss-up between Brian Harvey and Sells, the Dutchman that couldn't hold the ball. Well, Brian Harvey I actually played with. 6'2", and the best thing that happened to Brian's football career was when Charlie Minton came to Newcastle, because Charlie thought you couldn't be a first division player if you weren't 6 foot, and Brian suited the bill. And because he was 6'2", Charlie immediately thought he was a better goalkeeper than Ronnie Simpson. Well, sadly, Brian was a good shot stopper, but his hands were put on hot, somebody said to me, because he couldn't hold the ball. He had limp wrists, which was desperate for a goalkeeper. So Brian gets the goalkeeping spot. And then the right back is somebody else I played with, Arnold James Woolard is his full name, as he used to sometimes tell you. He was from Bermuda. Fantastic lad. Nicely tanned, blonde hair, blue eyes, a real Adonis of a character, and quite a good footballer until you wanted to turn him. And for a fullback, he was so slow turning. It was like turning the Esso Northumbria in a tub of chocolate. I mean, that's how slow he was. He was just desperate, absolutely desperate. But his name's interesting because I remember Benny Craig talking to all about in a training session, and Arnold suddenly appeared. And Benny Craig said to him, and what's your name, Bonnie lad? And he said, Arnold James Woodward. And so Benny says, well, get hold of that ball and see if your feet are as fancy as your name is. and that was Arnold, but he lovely lad, but desperately slow. And left back was an Italian, Antonio Barrega, and now we're up to 2019 with him, and well, it must be the only Italian I know that couldn't control a football when it was thrown to him. What's interesting is, after he left us, he must have played for nearly every team in the Serie A in the Italian league, but he was there. At right midfield, I've got John Mitten's son. Again, a lovely lad, but for somebody who'd been coached by his father from the day he could walk almost, control of the ball was abysmal, but worse was his tackling. He was fearful of getting hurt, and the net result was he got hurt because he just used to dangle his leg out, and more often enough he'd meet somebody that would kick it for him. So he was there. Centre half, well, there's only one centre half that could be in the worst team, and that's a young man called Marcelino, who had a whole season off because he got a spelt in his finger. I mean, that was amazing. And then it left side of the back three, John Allen Boomsong, who, frankly, how he ever played for France, I don't know. But he used to run like a colt. His legs were all over the place. But not a great footballer for me. Then at the forward line on the right side, Riviere, who was a Frenchman, who was not the best of the Frenchmen that we had. And then, of course, inside him, I've put our old friend Cisco, who was dumped on Kevin Keegan. It's the only way to describe it. And then when we got to centre forward, well, there was a lot of characters could have lined up for that. There was a Frenchman. There was all sorts of names. And but I picked on Franz Pringle, who was just absolutely hopeless.
Frank Pingle.
Frank Pingle, that's right. And Blister, our big Joe's, or whatever you want to call him, Joe Linton, features in that. But to be honest, to actually call him a centre forward, I think is saying too much anyway. And then to the inside left position, I've put Hendrick because he hasn't showed anything at all. Yet the report papers were saying that the other night for Ireland he played like a hero. Well, I wish we could see some of that hero. And on the left side, Brian Pinas was the left-sided one. Someone who, again, control just didn't come into the game. So there's my worst 11 to give people a start and go from there if they want to follow on. The Burnley,
right, good stuff. Burnley then.
The Burnley. Well, Burnley was good for me because there's a bit of there's obviously a personal side which you lads have heard a bit of before because. Apart from Newcastle United, Burnley was the only team that I actually had trials for, apart from Newcastle United, and it was fascinating. How I ended up getting a trial with Burnley was that their local scout Charlie Ferguson, I think I've told you lads this story before, came to me home and tried to persuade my father to let me go to Burnley for 2 weeks. And he came into the house and he, hi Neil, and he came in and he was wearing this fantastic tan overcoat that all the posh guys and gangsters used to wear in those days. And as soon as he sat down in the house, I realised he'd done his research because he went into the inside pocket, what they call a poacher's pocket, and pulled out of a bottle of Lamb's Navy rum. And well, Guess what my father's favourite tipple was? Lamb's Navy rum. And I was quickly sent off to the local shop to get some fags so that he could talk to my father on his own. And he, by the time I came back, I was on my way to Burnley for a fortnight's trial. He told the old man to let us go. But more than that, he'd also noticed that we didn't have a television. And the next day, lo and behold, Mountford's TV people in Howden sent the van up with a brand new television for the Mitchells, and there it was installed that very day. So Burnley does feature quite largely in my football life, as does the two weeks that I spent there. But that should be no surprise if you look at Burnley's history with teams and lads around the northeast. Steve, I sent you the Northumberland boys picture I've used before. I sent it again to you to put up.
Right, bear with us.
All right.
I'm in order, George. I didn't expect you to go to number 5 before number 1.
Oh, sorry. Well,
you're keeping us on my toes. You've given a complete 1 to 11 of players, bad players. Then you've gone on to Burnley. Now you're throwing us under the bus with this.
It's called a takeover.
Of those lads there, Sesso is the first one on the left-hand side. He went to Burnley. Dave Richardson. Chinky Richard, I'd get shot for saying that now. Harry Gilbert from Blythe, then it was me. Tommy Spratt signed for Manchester United. And Young, he went to Sheffield Wednesday. Next one, Stuart Buchanan, who went to Burnley. Dave Lackenby went to Burnley. And Ian Bolam went to Burnley. So they all went. What was interesting is that after the fortnight there, and by now we're talking about Bob Lord and Alan Brown running Burnley, and after the fortnight there, Alan Brown took her to the train with Charlie Ferguson, the scout who brought her there, and said we'd all get letters explaining what was happening, etc., and offers and what have you. Well, none of us got letters because by the Wednesday of the following week, Alan Brown was manager of Sunderland, and the only two people that got letters was Cess Irwin, and Judd Buchanan, and the two of them got letters to go to Sunderland, not to Burnley. So you remembered them, but the rest of them got absolutely nothing. So that's fine, Steve. I just wanted to illustrate how many kids used to go to Burnley. So I wasn't the exception, is all I'm trying to say. There's a picture of a map, and I think that's number one. I think that's where I want to go to now.
Back in the floor, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you now. I'm on par with you now.
There's the old ground, and there's the old houses that used to be next to the ground. They're not there anymore. And I stayed in Ann Street. You can see it there. And there was two houses, two back-to-backs that seemed to belong to the same person. I suspect it was Bob Lord, the owner of Burnley. And they had ladies looking after the lads in to turn these rooms into like dormitories, with bunk beds in and that sort of thing. We're well looked after, well fed, and needless to say, with Bob Lord being a pie manufacturer, every main meal had some sort of pie in it, and kept we well fed and well. And then we used to go around from the house into the turf moor. Now, Burnley were the first club ever in the history of Football League to have a proper training facility, a training ground. Now, I think there's a picture there. Well, just go through the sequence. That's Turf Moor as I remember it, not the modern Turf Moor that we've got now.
How long ago is that, George? I was just trying to guess. Is that like the 70s?
No, 56, 57.
Wow. Well, I looked at the floodlights and I was thinking that was the giveaway. The
floodlights
were, so I was thinking, how far does that go back? So that's in 90s. Yeah. It must be like one of the first colour photographs of a football program.
Yeah. And the next one. Now, that's the training facility I'm talking about. They were the first club to have a proper training ground with facilities. And that's the modern, that's the modern medical facilities and all the rest of it that they had, but it's several, as you can see, several miles away from Turf Moor. But that was then when we went. It was just like a couple of Nissan huts. It wasn't like that then. But that's it now, and they were the very first to have a proper training facility. I think that's probably modern pictures of Turf Moor now, Steve. Yeah, that's it now.
One more picture, and that's that one.
Yeah, and you can see that some of the old houses are still there, but they're all grassed, where some of the other ones have been knocked down. So it's not quite the same as it was when that I remember. But that's the modern Turf Moor, which is quite different. And it's remarkable that in the 10 years that Bob Lord was the chairman of Burnley, they went from always been a reasonable football team, but in 1960, of course, they actually won the championship. I think did I send the championship team photo? I don't know. No, right. Well, that championship squad, it was about 15 of them they used, and about 8 of them were from the northeast. There was Jimmy Adamson from Ashton, Cummins from Sunderland. There was another lad from Sunderland that played in goal. And I think he's in one of the programs I sent you. So
do you want us to show the program now, George?
The first program, we'll go to the proper game, yeah.
Is it that one?
Yes, that's it. Yes. And I've lost me place in me bits of paper here. That's the program, and I think I put the inside bit with the teams. Yeah. Strong was from Sunderland. Mather was from Morpeth. Cummins was from Sunderland. Atwell was from Amble. And Elliot came to Sunderland as a little later on. He was from Bradford, but even in that team, there was 5 of them from the northeast. And you look at our team: Bobby Cowell, Jackie Milburn, and that's it. that's the Geordies in our team. Yet they had 5 even at that time. So the first game that's the first game I want to go to, and it was a 7-1 thrashing of Burnley by Newcastle United, and it was our cup-winning team really that played, and they were I don't know what the hell I've done with it. And they just give Burnley a football lesson. It was unbelievable, the difference in the teams, and it was a case of.
Do you want us to come back here? Do you want us to come back here when you find your notes?
Yeah, please, Steve. I'm sorry about that. That's unusual for me. Just I turned it over.
Mate, no worries. Steve,
turned it over too far.
We'll come to you now, Steve.
Okay. Well, my first game is quite a memorable game for many people if they're of the age, which was the semi-final when we played Burnley in 1974. I think George were you there, George, at that match, semi-final?
No, I didn't get to the semi-final.
And I think, Steve, you were around, but you didn't go. You said earlier on.
No, my mum wouldn't let us go, not after all that crowd trouble at Nottingham Forest. It was terrible, she said. So you're not going to go to
well, that was the interesting lead in actually to the story, because it's more stories around the game itself that I want to talk, because I think probably people know what happened, and sort of Max 2 fantastic goals, which I'll touch on later. But as Steve said there, the Forest game where we had the pitch invasion and the game null and void, and we had to go twice to Everton, and even they were adventurous. The bus I was on got a bricks chucked at the window on the second game, and so to get through that round. And one of the things that meant is that it pushed everything back before the semi-final, because usually you want plenty of time to organise it. And for whatever reason, it meant that the time scale from that game to when the semi-final was played was shortened. I don't know whether the club would have done this if they hadn't had a short time, but they just decided to put the tickets on sale on a Sunday morning at 9:30 and have a free-for-all. That's how you got the tickets. There was no loyalty points or anything. You just had to turn up at the ground. Well, that meant going and because obviously lots wanted to go for I guess we probably got about 25,000 of the I think about 55,000 was at the match. So we probably got about 25 to 30,000. And so that there was basically 2 queues. There was one queue on the east stand that was going to sell tickets at the Gallagher end at the bottom, and the other coming down Barrack Road that were going to sell tickets in the old car park. Well, me and my mates, we decided we'd go and join the queue at about 10:30. We went on the usual Saturday night drink and joined the queue. We were up the east stand side, round the corner at the top on Lees's Terrace, halfway down the bank towards the other side of Lees's Terrace when we joined the queue at about 10:30. So that's a queue right up past the east stand, down the back lane, and just round the turnstiles at the bottom, just round the corner from the Strawberry. So that was the queue at 10:30 on the Saturday night. Turnstiles weren't open until 9:30 on the Sunday morning. So that was going to be a bit of a queue, and obviously going to build up as the night went on. All of a sudden, there was probably about midnight, there was a surge forward, and everybody moved forward quite a bit. We ended up down the east stand. It was probably a bit more sheltered, to be honest, about the bit where where it starts to go down the back lane and on the raised up bit. So we were there. And just standing up, there was no way to sit down. There was just no space. You were just cramped up, trying to get some sort of sleep while it was, while you could. And obviously, there was good banter going on and a lot of singing and chanting. But a lot of people had a few beers, so there was people wandering off in the woods to do what you have to do in Lees's Park. So I think it was about 5:30 in the morning. We thought, well, we better get into the back lane, because it's gonna start. People are gonna push down the back lane. They're the ones that's gonna get the tickets. So I think about 5:30 in the morning, we went down and joined and stood just crowded in that back lane, and we're there as the night went on and the dawn broke, and got into getting, as the time went on, they opened the gates. I think they did a little bit earlier, and managed to get the tickets. And it was shortly after 9:30 when I got my ticket. And I don't think there was many left after that. I don't think everybody got one. And I think there'd probably been trouble on that side. I think the same thing happened on the Barrack Road side, with just absolute masses. It was total chaos. But obviously everybody got the tickets and went down to the match, and got the tickets for the match. So coming to the match itself, we were all in the Cup end, which if you've ever seen pictures of what the ground used to be like, it was just a big open. If you take if you remember what the old Gallagher end was like, it was probably twice the height of that, and that was just masses of black and white. But one of the things you weren't allowed to do was take polls. There were a lot of people done banners. Remember in those days, it wasn't a case of having replica shirts, so people had black and white scarves and hats, or they made their own banners and their own shirts and things. But it was a sea of black and white. But you weren't allowed to use poles because I thought that might be an offensive weapon, because we were troublemakers after the Forest game. So you had to, if you were going to have a banner, you couldn't have it on a pole. Well, as you know, I'm in a wheelchair now, but in those days I used to use walking sticks. So we were about halfway up in that end, and we decided we'd use my walking sticks to hold the banner up. So that wasn't allowed either. So the police came and confiscated my walking sticks. So I was without.
Imagine that now.
So I was leaning on the banner, so I wasn't needing them because I was leaning on the barrier. But we made something go and plead with the police that I was going to need to use them at some point in time, and I had to give us them back. So we promised not to put them on the banner anymore. Which the banner we had was actually "Frankie bites your legs." It was the old saying that Norman Hunter used to bite your legs. So we had one where related to Frankie Clark biting your legs. So that was the banner we had up. So that was built up to the match, and then the match itself. It was a very tense game, and to be fair, Newcastle probably were probably second best for most of that game, because Burnley put us under the cosh. They hit the bar a couple of times. There was some great saves from Willie McFall, and it got into the second half. Well, into the second half when Supermac got the first one, and it was a challenge on the edge of the box. I think with Colin Waldron, I think, who was centre half of Burnley at the time, and he managed to shrug him off and get past, and then he hit a shot. Keeper parried it. Alan Stevenson was in goal. The key parried it. It came out to McDonald, and he put it back underneath him into the net. That's a picture of the goal there. So that was about 65 minutes. So we're a bit relieved to get in front, and as you can imagine, how wild it went in the Cup end of the ground. Burnley carried on pressing. Again, there was more saves, and then probably what most memorable goal about 10 minutes later, which was I think people put it down as one of the best passes Terry Hibbett's ever done, with his sweet left foot. Burnley were attacking. They got the ball, broke away from the edge of our penalty area. It was a sort of lobbed out to Terry Hibbett, who picked it up about halfway into our half on the left side, and he just hit it first time right into the centre of the pitch as McDonald surged past the centre half, and the pace that McDonald had, he just broke away, and as the keeper advanced, slotted it underneath him 2-0, and just a fantastic goal, and a bit more of a cushion being 2-0 ahead. So that was the game. So that was it. We then they managed to hang on to the end with that lead. I think Burnley hit the bar again before the end of the match, but we hung on, and it was great to celebrate and get into the final, where the run sadly came to an end, as we've talked about in previous shows. So that's my first game, semi-final in 1974.
Anybody wants to find out the full details on that, you can go onto the playlist on the Malcolm McDonald, Supermac and Gibbo playlist. There's some great recollections of the 74 Cup run and the 76 Cup run with him and Gibbo. Well worth a listen. Talk all the way through both games and both finals. Well worth it. And obviously cover the Burnley semi-final in there. Mitch, sorry for the delay today, mate. I know it affects you more than anybody else with your timing out there, but... welcome, mate.
It also, the Stu would testify, Dubai for a smart city, sometimes the internet drives you bloody crazy. But that's another matter.
We got there in the end.
Got there in the end. So, odd one, this one for me, because the gap in time between when we last played Burnley to when we played them again. So the last group of sort of fixtures with Burnley was sort of in the early 80s. And then there's a big gap until you get to the time when I was actually out here. So it was a funny selection of the fixtures to pick from me. So I've gone for something earlier on. And it's just really to give people an experience of what I was brought up in the whole ways of supporting Newcastle United with my dad and with my granddad, you know. So I'm going for the 6th of November 1982. It's Keegan's first season back. And that season was sort of the first season when I was sometimes going, quote unquote, on my own. I wasn't going on my own. You'd go if there was a few of the dads going, and a load of the lads would go with a few of the dads. Or you'd go with my dad and my granddad, or sometimes on occasion just my granddad as well. If I wasn't doing that, I was listening to it on the radio with my granddad. And the voice of the radio then was Charles Harrison, if I remember. Before Mick Lowes, and I hope Mick's getting better day by day, by the way. And I'm not sure which one. I certainly don't think I was at this one. So I suspect this was one of the ones which I would listen to on the radio with my granddad. You got to also remember that the pub opening hours were different then, and so 3 o'clock was drinking up time. So if I was at the match with my granddad, it was great because it was like a trip to a different world. You'd be parked outside the Hotspur, and there'd be a group of kids outside the Hotspur because you weren't even allowed in the pub, waiting for whoever had brought them to come out the pub, finish their pint, and take you out to the match. And you'd peek in through the doors. The door was open, and it was like the smoky, almost like peeking through past the courts in Narnia to see what the world inside the pub was like, you know. But more commonly, if I was with my granddad, I would be parked on the bench outside the Mauritania pub in Howden, between the pub and then across the cup was the bookies. And my granddad would come out on the occasion, wander in, put his bets on, come back and go for finish his pint, you know. And this one, particularly the game itself, the 3 names synonymous with that season. Waddle, Keegan, and Verratti. And I think of them, Imre Verratti's the one that probably doesn't get as much recognition from that season. For the goals he scored and the goals he made. What I do remember of the Burnley game was that it was comfortable, you know. And I think it come on the back of a couple of thrashings of Leeds, one in the League Cup and one in the league, and it was a welcome win. But that was the first wobble we had that season where we just lost a little bit of ground to the teams chasing for promotion. And we never really caught it back up. I think we finished 4th that year. And we just fell short, you know, and we had a couple of points where they'd really wobbled and didn't quite catch back up and never really got 100% back into the race. But this was a welcome win, which came at a really welcome time. And one listened to on the radio with one of the voices that was synonymous with Newcastle United as I was growing up.
Great stuff, mate. Excellent. Good recollection. Steve Hasty, good evening.
Good evening, Steve. Evening, chaps. Evening, everybody who's watching. Well, yeah, I listened to guys, and Mitch is absolutely spot on. The gap that we had between 83 and probably 2009, 2010 made it very, very difficult to pick a game. I was going to pick the game that Steve mentioned, but Steve got in ahead of us. So I've gone a little bit further back this time. I've gone for February the 2nd, 1895. It was an FA Cup first round game. It's St James's Park in front of a packed 8,000. And just to give you a bit of a picture of it, 1892 to 93, we went out in the first round in a 3-2 home defeat against Borough. And then in 1893-94, We went out in the second round after beating Sheffield United 2-0 in the first round. We then lost to Bolton again at home 2-1. So this was an opportunity to move on in the cup, and I think like I say, it was one of the first cup games that we'd had. We're in the second division just for those of you who weren't aware, we're actually in the second division. In goal we had W.A. Ward, right back we had Bobby McDermott, left back was Tom Rendell, right half was Charlie Dixon, the centre half was Willie Graham. Obviously the left half was Bill Creeley, who you all remember, I'm certain. Outside right was Jock Smith. Inside right, Bobby Willis. Centre forward, John McNee. Inside left was Pat O'Brien, and the outside left was Bill Thompson. All names that you recognise, all names that you're all familiar with. I did number them 1 to 11, but just for some of you who are probably a little bit younger than me, not be aware that numbers didn't come in on the back of shirts till 1928. So I just thought I'd throw that one in for you. Sort of guy I am. So what I thought, I can see the faces now, and you're thinking, who are these players? So I'll just give you a run through. Ward was a goalkeeper. We got him. He's a Scotsman. We got him from Loughborough Town. He had a reputation of being quite reliable, believe it or not, which is quite handy for a goalkeeper. He was Newcastle's regular goalkeeper into the second season in the Football League. Next came McDermott. An early exponent of the game is how the programme described him. Bob's experience was vital during Newcastle's first 2 seasons in the Football League, and he was an exceptional defender, aged only 25. Rendell, born on Tyneside, first of our ones from the northeast. He spent 1 season at St James's Park, which was the season 1894-95. Another. He was a regular throughout that campaign. He was used in a variety of positions. So a bit of a utility man here. We're talking a Stevie Watson type of defender, played in midfield, played in defence. Then we had Willie Graham, one of the earliest exponents of the senior game. So obviously he knew his way around the pitch quite well. One of the club's first club captains as well, believe it or not. Played in the very, very first game at St James's Park. So a lot to live up to. I mentioned Crilly there, Bobby Crilly. He was a stalwart for Newcastle, as you all know, and he came from Newcastle East End. His first game was at St James's Park, believe it or not, was against Celtic in 1892, and first game in the Football League was against Royal Arsenal in 1893. Then we had Dixon, who were picked up from Preston North End. He'd been quite a good player for Preston, but we managed to get him towards the end of his career. Smith, another ex-Newcastle East Ender, known as Jock, believe it or not. Don't know why. He, again, a decent player. He'd actually played for Liverpool, believe it or not. And he was born, as I say, a Scotsman born in Ayrshire. Then we had a local lad in Bobby Willis. Bobby came from Shankhouse Black Watch, the one called, apparently, during the first season in the Football League. And he did more than enough in his stay for it to be extended to the following season, which was good for him. But then he returned to the amateur.
Well done, Bobby.
Then we had John McNee. Now, John was coming at the end of his career around about this time when he joined Newcastle. At the start of the second Football League season for us. One of the earliest champions of the game. And he was described as probably one of the game's original tricky wingers, which is nice to know. O'Brien, another Scotsman, Pat O'Brien, who was only 22, picked him up from Sheffield United, who obviously are the oldest football club in the world. Came to us in his second season. He said apparently played in 5 different positions during this season, but he only played 9 games, so I don't know what went on there. And then finally we had Bill Thompson. Now, Bill was 33-year-old, obviously the old man of the team, lanky defender. He was on the books with us for 10 years, but a steady stream of injuries and the rise of other defenders did restrict his involvement. He came from North Seaton, if you were wondering. The game itself, I suppose you want to know about that. 1-2-1. Good game. Both goals coming from Tommy Rendell. And just to sort of finish off, I think, you look at that squad And you look at some of the teams that were in the league at that time, even though this was a cup game. We were in the second division, along with Manchester City, Burslem, Port Vale, Burton, Crewe, Lincoln, Leicester, who are known as Leicester Fossey, by the way, at that point. Bury, Notts County, Loughborough, Woolwich Arsenal, Darwin, Liverpool, Aston Villa, and a club that went by the name of Newton Heath. I'm not sure what happened to them. I think they must have just drifted away. But obviously, we did well in the cup, winning this game 2-1. But we got knocked out in the second round by Aston Villa, a 7-1 absolute hammering. So that was that. But I think what's important about the whole thing is this group of players were the foundation for the football club, and everything that they did, they laid towards getting us into the first division in 1898. So this is where the foundations were being set with Newcastle. Obviously coming into the league in 1892, and by 1898 we got promoted. You then look at how that then progressed. Obviously we were league champions in 3 successive seasons. 1904, 1905, 1906. 5 seasons in 3 seasons in 5. 1906, 1907, 1908, 1909. And then we all know that we reached the final in 1905, 1906, 1908, 1911. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but we did win in 1910, 1924, 1932, 1951, 1952, and 1955. And I'm going to finish you off because I've dug really deep into the archives now, and I can see you all sitting there. And I actually managed to get a picture of the second goal, right? So if you're ready, there it is. There's the second goal. For those of you who were thinking, it was quite a shot, as you can see. There he is. He friendly took the shot. It went into the top corner. You can see that it was a Pat Gallagher end. Steve, if you look carefully, you might see yourself. I'm not too sure. There's a couple.
Oh, you're talking to Steve Wilkinson.
So that was it. That was my first choice, lads.
I was just. Can you tell us, Steve? Because didn't they used to have string for the crossbar in those days? When did they come with the wooden? I think it was a wooden crossbar. Can you remember what year that came in when they didn't have string for the crossbar?
No.
God knows what you're going to do next week. We've had the Bob Dylan tribute. Now we've had the John Lennon tribute. That looked very like the John Lennon album cover. Brilliant, Steve. Brilliant stuff. Well done, mate. Good research. And no one will ever be able to pick you up on it because nobody else other than Paul Giovanni, the club historian, will know whether that's true or not.
Exactly.
Stu,
that's what I thought.
Stu Penman, you've even stumped George. Stu Penman, over to you, mate.
Well, I'm glad George knows how I feel when he talks about games from 40, 50 years before.
George nodded off.
Hey, we could also break a record today. We could actually start the show on one day and finish on the next.
That's my fault for having a governor's meeting before the show.
No, well, it's a time difference as well, isn't it? Right. Strangely, you've all talked about games from ages ago. My game is from 2015, and I don't have much recollection of it. So I've had to write a lot of things down. It will become apparent why I have as I go through the notes. The game was 1st of January 2015, and it finished 3-3. So the game was a bit of a blur. It was actually JC's John Carver's first game as a caretaker with Pardew in the process going to Palace. Now, I'd been at John's house. It's a very big house in the country. A few days earlier, where he told us that Pardew was leaving and he was going to be in charge. So we sang a song to celebrate, and then we just relaxed, had some coffee, TV, and that was it. But it was his second time in a row because he had been in charge for the game against Blackburn when Sir Bobby Robson was booted out the club very unceremoniously. They beat Blackburn 3-0. But if we're talking about the game at 3-3, because it was New Year's Day, I'm sure more than me just in the crowd required hair of the dog just to even get to the match, never mind skip through it. Because when I was looking around, there was lots of girls and boys looked like they'd had a good New Year and had a bad head. Right, so anyway, back to the match. A quarter hour gone, and our very own limo dancer, Steve Taylor, threw himself at the ball from a Jack Colback cross, and he headed the ball down into the ground, bounced up into the net, and it gave us a deserved lead because we had been playing very well. No sooner had the celebrations died down, Paul Dummett placed a final header into what unfortunately was our own net to make it 1-1. Now, our second goal, which was, well, second goal in the right end, if you don't count Dummett's goal, came from Jack Colback. So he had made an assist and then set one, scored one himself. He'd come from the edge of the box through a crowd of players. And my tender head once more was punished with the roar of the crowd. So we dominated to half-time without further success. And then they had 3 players taken off in that first half. You'll probably remember better than me. They had 2 players injured and someone was ill and had to go off. But you start thinking, right, they've had 3 players taken off, 3 subs used. It's half-time. We're nailed on for another New Year's Day success. But again, this is Newcastle and nothing ever goes straight to plan. So Deitch, quite often described as a charmless man, obviously played the siege mentality in the card to perfection in the dressing room at half-time because his team were unrecognisably good after the break. Ings got the deserved equaliser and Burnley looked most likely to win the game, to be honest. But then Sissoko scored for us to stab the ball home after some very poor defender went right across the 6-yard box and he just took it at the back post. So just as we're about to build up a song or two to celebrate, George Boyd drilled home for them. With minutes left to equalise. For the 3rd time they'd equalised. Thankfully, they ran out of time to get the winner. And JC soon discovered what a lonesome street being Newcastle United manager can be at times. St. James's Park life indeed.
Fantastic, mate. Good stuff. Good review. Give a chance to give us a shout out to the sponsors. I've got it. We're going around the board again after the sponsor shout out. Big shout out to Spider VPN for sponsoring us over the last few months. Google Spider VPN. They are number one for protecting your computer, protecting your photographs, protecting anything on their Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of the search list. Big shout out to skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, websites www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and to John at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables and balls in Newcastle, and the guy who runs our website, NUFCmatters.com. Jab Signature as well. Thanks for making our flyers. Jabsignature.co.uk. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, subscribe by hitting the Newcastle Legends logo, and that's it. You can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video. Click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to put a question up. And we're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and all podcast providers. Christmas parties this Friday. Last chance to get tickets. And Super Mac and Gibbo will be doing an audience with, and Junior Turner will be singing his songs live on stage. Doors open at 7, and the following week an evening with Peter Beardsley. Tickets for that are £15. Tickets for both events at the Irish Club are available from newcastlelegends.com. Just click shop. And tickets for Bobix.com's event with Supermac and myself on Thursday the 9th of December from Bobix.com. It used to be the Punch Bowl in Jesmond, so that's where you get your tickets for that. Don't forget, you can make a donation to the food bank at nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk, and you can also buy raffle tickets for the custom-made Peter Beardsley signed trainers in your size. They've been provided by I Am The Renovation. And don't forget as well, this coming weekend, if you want to meet Supermac in person, you can do so at the Dog and Parrot. I'll be there with Malcolm at 1 o'clock. It's just opposite the Centre for Life. And don't forget as well, if you want to become a member of NUFC Matters, John from QTech has set this up. You'll be able to buy your membership pack at the food bank event on Friday. and you'll be able to get your own little membership card, your mug and your scarf, and you'll be entered into the prize draw every month. And the next prize draw is 2 tickets for Manchester United at home. So that's not to be sniffed at. And one more shout out, I'm sure I had... No, it's tomorrow night. I'm doing that. Okay, George, we're back with you. Just on the first game, I guess. Just your notes from the 7-1.
Well, I'd dropped my notes on the floor, though, on my feet when I went, and I hadn't realised. But never mind. I interested much in the chat going through while I've been talking to Steve about comments about people from the northeast playing for Burnley. People mentioned Ray Hankin. Well, Ray Hankin didn't just come to the northeast; he came from Wallsend, and it talked about Ralph Coates, and there was others like Billy Poynton, Brian Talbot, dozens and dozens of them. If you go and look at Burnley's lineup of past, former and present players, the number of Geordies is incredible. And in this 7-1 game, and it's the 15th of September 1951, and it was basically a cup-winning team that played in this match. Ideal for the Chicken Road Academy to instruct me, of course, what we were going to see. And also the other side of it was they were also aware of how many Northeasterners played for Burnley. And in this team, we beat them 7-1, 51,300 in the ground. And our team was Simpson, Cowell, McMichael, Harvey, Brennan, Ted Robledo, Walker, George Robledo, Milburn, Hannah, and Mitchell. Seymour was my manager then. The Burnley team was the one I showed at the beginning. Strong, who was from Morpeth, Mather, who was from Amble, Adamson from Ashington, Cummins from Sunderland, and Morris, the inside left, was from Blythe. So there's 5-6 people in one team for Burnley even then, which was long before the Bob Lord era when they used to go in draws. But anyway, it was 7-1 and it was a fantastic game. The game was the stars were the two wingers, Tommy Walker and Bobby Mitchell, who just tore Burnley to pieces. The goal scoring stars for once wasn't Jackie Milburn. George Hanna hit the first and the second. Bobby Mitchell the third, and then George Robledo hit 4 on the trot. A perfect hat trick to start with, right foot, left foot header, and then a screamer of a header from the edge of the penalty area for his fourth. And Burnley replied with a goal from Holden, who at that time had just become the England centre forward. So, this Burnley team weren't duck eggs. I mean, Elliott was the England left winger. Morris was a Welsh inside forward. McElroy played for Ireland. Adamson was in the England team, and Strong was in the England squad as well. So it wasn't a team that to laugh at. It was a team that was a good team, which was well and truly beaten by an even better team. So I mean, as I say, I was interested in all the chat about Hankin and others that were there, and that's gone on. I don't think it's stopped either, because I gather the scouts are still very aware of what's happening in the northeast of England. Someone else made the comment that Burnley was a proper football club. I couldn't agree more. 1888, and they've been in the same place since they came into the Football League, one of the founder members of the Football League. People give accolades to the so-called Big Six. Well, I'd rather we give accolades to the people who got the thing going, like Burnley, who are a founder member, and others like that. Rather than worry about how much money they've got. So that's my first one, 7-1, 15th of September 1951.
But we're on to your second game now, George.
Right, okay. Then we're back to the 3rd of September 1955, and it was Newcastle 3, Burnley 1, 42,000 in the ground, and this time a little slightly different team, well, quite a different team, because we were recovering. We'd lost players after the cup final and all the rest of it. But still a good team. Thompson, Lackenby, Michael Schooler, Brennan, Casey, Milburn, Davies, White, Hannah and Mitchell. And in that team, Thompson, Lackenby and Milburn were the three Geordies of the team, and Doug Livingston was our manager. The Burnley team was a good one. Was MacDonald in goal, Rodman, who was from Whitley Bay, Winton from Ashington, Adamson from Ashington, Cummins from Sunderland, Gray from Crook, and Stevenson from Ashington. So again, there's 6 out of 11 in the team playing us who are from the northeast. I mean, my wish is it was the other way around. It would have been nice to have that 6 in our team instead of theirs. But anyway, it was a good game, and it was the highlight again was the play of Jackie Milburn on the right wing. He absolutely tore the Burnley defence to shreds. Set up Reg Davies with a tap in for the first one. Set up Bobby Mitchell for the second one, and then the third one was a very rare goal from our captain Jimmy Schooler, and again he owed the setup to Bobby Mitchell. And at this time, of course, Burnley were managed by Alan Brown, and as I say, we were managed by Doug Livingston. A good game to watch, good game of football by 2 good footballing sides. And as I say, little did I know that a couple of years later I'd actually be, going to Burnley for a trial, along with lots of other Geordies. So that's my second game, 3-1, 3rd of September, 1955.
Great stuff, George. Thanks, mate. Got there in the end. Steve Wilkinson.
Steve, could you put the picture of the trophy up first that I sent? Put that up first, the second one. Right, I just wanted everybody to know what a trophy looks like, because this is what we'll be getting in the next few years. This is actually the last domestic trophy we ever won, believe it or not, and that's the Texaco Cup. And the Texaco Cup was a competition, if anybody's not familiar, that was played only over 4 seasons between 1971 and 75, and it started as an extra competition for those that didn't qualify for Europe. In those days, only 6 teams got into Europe. It was the league champions, the cup winners got into the Cup Winners' Cup, and then 4 clubs from England got into the UEFA Cup or Europa Cup or whatever it was called. Kept changing its name. Equivalent of the Fairs Cup that we'd won in '69. So there was initially, when it started, there was teams from Ireland, 2 teams from Ireland, 2 teams from Northern Ireland, and I think probably the rest were made up, with probably 8 and 4, I think, from England and Scotland, maybe to make up the numbers. At that time, there was all the troubles going on in Northern Ireland. So by the time 73-74 season, which is the game I'm going to talk about when we played Burnley in the final, it was only English and Scottish teams left in. So England had 9 representatives and Scotland had 7. And the teams that it started at the sort of last 16 stage because of that. And we had from England, we had Burnley, Everton, Sheffield United, Leicester City, Newcastle, Norwich, Stoke, and Birmingham and Coventry. They were the 9 teams from England taking part. And from Scotland, it was East Fife, Hearts, Dundee United, Ayr United, Morton, St Johnstone, and Motherwell were the teams from Scotland. So not the high flyers, perhaps, but established top teams. And there was a bit of an incentive to win it because the competition was an official FA competition, but it was one of the first competitions where major corporate sponsors were contributed, and it was the Texaco, the American petrol company, and they put 100,000 quid in, which for that time was quite a decent prize. So it was certainly worth winning. And as you'll see from the team that talk about that played in the final when we played Burnley, it was a strong team put out. Not like nowadays where the lesser competitions have maybe reserved squads put out. So it was certainly worth winning. So they were quite competitive games. And just to take you through the route to the final, we played in the first round. We played all these games. We played over 2 legs, the same as like the European games. We played Morton in the first round, won 2-1 in the in the away leg, and then got a 1-1 draw when we played here. Birmingham game, I think we talked about when we talked about Birmingham previously, that it was a time when there was a miners' strike on, and there was a 3-day week in operation, and power was very restricted. So all games had to be played towards the end of the year and the start of the following year, over 73, 74, had to play during the day without floodlights. So when we played Birmingham, the first leg was away. We drew 1-1. The second leg at St James's, we were drawing ones each, and it was a 2:00 kickoff. So it's getting to 4:00. Well, if you know what it's almost to the day, because it was 28th of November. So if you can imagine what the light was like at 4:00 on a Wednesday afternoon in November, you could hardly see anything. And instead of doing the sensible thing and having the penalty shootout, which was ultimately going to come at the end of extra time, they could have done that at 90 minutes. But instead of that, they decided to start the extra time. And after about 10 minutes, it was a waste of time, and the game was abandoned. And they had to play it again the following week. So that time we beat Birmingham. Then we played in Dundee United in the second leg, lost the first leg away 2-0. And they obviously likely to go out. And when we played the second leg, which was in 19th of December, it was a dramatic finish. We actually won the game 4-1 in the end, but it was thanks to Supermac coming on from the subs bench. He'd had an injury about a month earlier and had been out for a while. And he came off the bench, and we were actually about to go out with only about 10 minutes left. And he came on, scored what was the equalising goal. But fortunately, unlike the European competitions, they didn't have away goals. And so that we went into extra time, and we scored the winner in extra time, which put us in the final. And so although that had all happened up to December, the final didn't take place till the end of April. So there was a big gap before the next time. And unlike all previous years, they decided this year that, I don't know whether it was because of this problems with the floodlights and the power cuts, that the season might have been run late. They decided to have the final only as one leg, which was unlike all the other seasons where there'd been a 2-leg final. So, and for whatever reason, we got drawn at home in the final. So you couldn't wish for a better opportunity to win it than have a home final. So that comes to the game itself. I can't actually remember an enormous amount about the game, but just to give you the team and tell you how strong this team was. There was only one change from the team that played in the FA Cup semi-final a couple of weeks earlier. So in goal, Willie McFall, fullbacks Frank Clark and Derek Craig. In the first game, David Craig had played, no relation at all, but Derek Craig, and I think it was almost one of his only games. David Craig must have been injured, and Derek Craig played at fullback. Across the middle, Terry McDermott, Pat Howard, Bob Moncur, and up front, Tommy Cassidy, Jinky Smith, Supermac, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbett. So other than that, Derek Craig for David Craig, that was the same team that played in the semi-final against Burnley. In this game, Burnley actually took the lead in 25 minutes. Goal from Paul Fletcher, but only 5 minutes later, Supermac, the man himself, who would been the scourge of Burnley in the semi-final of the FA Cup, equalised. And that's how it stayed till the end of the game. So went into extra time, and just as he'd done to win the last competition, we'd won the Fairs Cup, Lord Bob Moncur came up and got the winner in just before half time in the extra time, and we went on to win the trophy 2-1. Decent crowd for that time, 34,500, and that was the trophy as you saw at the beginning. And I think that you've got the programme there as well, Steve, of that match, just to finish the captions. There he is, Bob Moncur, the one that scored the winning goal. Wednesday, 24th of April. Obviously, floodlights allowed at that time because it was a 7:30 kickoff. So I think they must have sorted out the electricity problems at that time. So our last trophy, we actually won it again the second year, the year after, which was the last year of the competition. So over the 4 years the competition was on, we actually lost in the semi-final both times before that, in both cases in extra time, and won it in 74-75. So we were actually prolific in the Texaco Cup in the 1970s. So let's hope that's how it works out in the 2020s. Not the Texaco Cup though. You're mute, Steve.
On mute. You see, this is what happens when someone comes into the kitchen. Mitch, on to your second game, mate. Thanks for that, Steve. Great stuff.
Second game is one I watched out here, and I watched it with Stu. 26th of November 2018. Burnley won, Newcastle 2. We watched that game in Nelson's. I can't for the life think why we watched. Kind of think why we watched it in Nelson's, whether we were on self-imposed Goodfellas ban.
We did.
Because of shenanigans with Bills. I couldn't remember if it was because the shenanigans with Bills or if it was in the aftermath of Dave Cartman and the Sunrisers Hyderabad fans incident. But anyway, couldn't remember which one it was.
That was a self-imposed ban.
Self-imposed ban. The kickoff was delayed 30 minutes because of a medical emergency, which out here, once the clocks go on, it's like, or go back rather, it's a 4-hour difference. And sticking 30 minutes onto a midweek evening game is a bit of a killer for work the next morning. I can tell you that.
It was a Monday night, wasn't it?
It was a Monday night, and it was my
like
first
midnight kickoff.
My first win at Turf Moor since 1975. But a lot of that's because of the time gap where we didn't play Burnley. Is that Poppy back by any chance, Dad?
Yes. That's why I muted before.
Anyway, the game itself went really well. After 4 minutes, we were 1-0 up with a deflected shot, which was termed as an own goal off of me. And then at 23 minutes, Kieran Clark got the second, and that just made the match easy. Should have had a third, actually, by Richie. He missed from just about on the 6-yard line, and it should have been easily 3-0. Instead, it was 2-1 at half-time. Vokes got one back. But to be honest with you, the way we were playing, we were so well organised, typically under Rafa. We never really looked in doubt once we got the second goal. But the other reason I picked this game is again, we've done this before on the show. This is a game, this is 2018, November 2018. And if you look at the team that day, in the team with Dubravka, Shea, Fernandez, Clark and Richie, and on the bench, Hayden, Murphy, Shelby, McKillow and Woodman. So 10 of that match day squad are pretty much still part of our day-to-day match day squad now. And it shows how, once again, in the last 4 years, how poor the squad management's been. I bet there's no other Premiership team you could go back and look at their first team squad from November 2018 and have 10 members of that first team squad still in and regularly playing. And it just shows how lucky, really, Ashley's been to stay in the Premier League over that time before he sold the club. He really is a gambler and he really gets away with bloody murder. But that night was a really good night. Always a good night with mates out here in Dubai when you can actually get some of the cats herded together to watch the game together, whether it's in Goodfellas or whether it's in self-imposed ban in the Nelsons. And that's my second game. You're on mute again, Steve.
Not me, Steve. Right.
I'm on a hat trick, lads.
Yeah, I've brought me right up to date now. Right up to date. I've gone Steve, for the 25th of August, 2021.
What I'll do is I'm just going to point at you, Stu, if the mic's off.
I'll just speak after Steve. It's all right.
Right, 25th of August, 2021. Carabao Cup. I've written some notes here. It says, we're bidden to beat Premier League opposition in a cup competition for the first time in 7 years, looking to book a place in the third round of the Carabao Cup. But as we'd never won a game and still haven't won a game, believe it or not, Bruce went in vowing to play a very strong team. Now, I don't usually do this, but I've written a quote down, like what Steve Bruce said before the game. So I think it kind of fits in. He said, we're going to make changes tonight. We have to for several reasons. We have a squad for a reason, he told her. But we need to keep them all happy and some of them need games to keep them match fit and to stake a claim for the weekend and the Premier League games to come, which is fascinating. It sounds like he knows what he's doing. It sounds like he knows his squad. He sounds like he thinks they should be fit. This is August, by the way, just last August. So he says, but make no mistake, the starting 11 and the bench will be strong and we will be capable of getting through to the next stage. We reached the quarterfinals of the competition last year and the same stage of the FA Cup the season before. And I truly believe that there's nothing better than a cup run, particularly for a club with a cup tradition that this club has. Even if you do have to go back longer than we've had for all this since Newcastle won silverware. It's a cup competition and people are champing at the bit to play. That's where you use your squad. So good. He's got this is turned into tactics. This is good stuff, by the way. We've got 12 or 13 players not playing every Saturday. Oh, he's even doing his maths. This is fantastic. And I'm getting to like this guy now. So we've got 12 or 13 players not playing every Saturday, and this is an ideal opportunity where they will play. It'll be a strong squad, yes. I'll make changes, but I'll take the cup seriously, as I always have done since I've been here. That was a little sort of stab, wasn't it? That was a little, because he's still got it in his mind about Rafa, which we all remember. Anyway, so it comes to the day. Hayden's out with a knee injury, Shelby's out with a calf injury, so that's them two gone. Apparently, it came too early for Dummett. This is last August, by the way. He'd only just returned to training that week. Dubravka was out with a foot injury. Carl Darlow had COVID, and Callum Wilson was going to be rested. So, two teams, Burnley and Newcastle, both have lost their opening two fixtures. And he said he was going to make changes, but we ended up with a team with only Freddie Woodman and Jamal Lascelles, who were retained from the previous defeat against Aston Villa on the Saturday. We went into the team with Woodman, Manquillo, Kraft, Lascelles and Clark. That's an interesting back four, that. I think I've heard that recently. Lewis got a run out. Sean Longstaff, Hendrick. And I don't know whether he plays up front or whether he plays in midfield, but we had Fraser, Joe Linton and Dwight Gale. And a fairly strong bench when you look at it. Gillespie, Shaw. Is he still with her? I'm not too sure. Matty Longstaff, San Maximum, Murphy, Almiron and Willock. So we goes into the game. 10, 15 minutes into the game before anything happened, and Jeff Hendrick had a shot that went wide. Apparently, Fraser looked lively, as did Lewis. At some point in the game, Joe Linton scuffed a shot, and the ball fell to Hendrick, whose effort was blocked by Hennessy in the Burnley goal. They picked up Hennessy from Crystal Palace. Gale then clipped the top of the underside of the crossbar, and it went out. Gale and Manquillo then forced Hennessy into another couple of saves. Tremendous saves, as it was described in The Guardian. Well, it must have been some save. But if we're really honest, what we were watching here was two really, really poor teams. Two teams I consider, and I've written it down here because I wanted to get this point, teams who were set up by dinosaur managers who saw little interest in the word entertainment because perhaps it's not mentioned in their coaching books. But you know what? This is where it started to go a little bit haywire for me, because in the 19th minute, this is the problem with the Carabao Cup. You let kids in, don't you? And 19th minute, and they start shouting, Brucey, give us a wave. And what does he do? He waves back. So this is like he's beginning to think he's loved now. So that was a bit dodgy. Anyway, the game petered out after that, basically. It went to penalties. Up stepped the first penalty, and it was ASM. He can strike a ball. He missed. Wood put them 1-0 up. Willock made it 1-1 with a decent effort. Then Barnes stepped up, made it 2-1 for them. Joe Linton absolutely hammered a brilliant penalty in. They made it 2-0. It was described as top class. Burnley then went 3-2 in front through Dwight McNeil. Then Sean Longstaff stepped up. He put an absolute corker penalty in as well. So it was starting to look like at least we could take penalties. He made it 3-0. Especially when Woodman staved Josh Brownhill's penalty that kept we're back in the shootout because now we're level. and up steps Almiron. And at this point, you're thinking, he puts this away, and Woodman makes another save, or the miss, and we're through. But I think what we witnessed here was a penalty that was worthy of any England player in a Euro final, when he placed the most weak penalty to Hennessey's right, and the keeper virtually fell on the ball. So there we were. It was 3-3. Burnley still had a kick to go. Charlie Taylor stepped up, scored past Woodman. That was the decisive kick, and we were out. It wasn't even September, and we were already out of the cup. What followed, however, were the usual cliched comments that we have really come to be used to from Steve Bruce. But before I get on to his comments, I just want to point out that in the warm-up, Steve Agnew and Ben Dawson were working with the centre-backs, which is interesting. Stephen Clements, he was doing some passing drills with the midfielders, and Graham Jones was overseeing the formers in some shooting practice. So I suppose you could say that even in the warm-up, that told a bit of a story about what we were like, because defensively, we've been and carried on being all over the place. Midfield, we cannot pass. And the barn door remains a safe option for anyone who wants to stand in front of it, and as far as our strikers are concerned. But in Bruce's world, it was a different kettle of fish. And he told us all that overall, we played defensively excellent. I can't remember Burnley having a shot or my goalkeeper having to make a save. And he also said, but we're not having any luck at the minute. We've got to keep bashing away, and I'm sure it'll change. So that's good of him. So I thought I better look at the stats. The stats were that we had 54% of the possession. We had 18 shots compared to their 6, but only 3 were on target out of the 18, of which they had 1 of their 6 on target. You begin to realise what the game was like. We had 9 corners, they had 4, and there was 8 fouls committed. But we all know that Bruce loves the stats league, but never really got what the fans were seeking from, or what we were seeing from our own eyes. Square pegs, round holes, disjointed formation, and team setup. I think we also saw from Bruce a fear to play a pressing game, and a conviction that the percentages would even themselves out over the season. And I was trying to think of what I would say to finish it off. And what Bruce in this game summed up for me. And it reminded me of the time that Eric Morecambe and Ernie Wise in that very, very famous sketch that they did where Eric was playing the piano. I don't know whether you remember it. I'm sure you all do. And Andre Previn, the world famous conductor, was standing in front of them. And Andre Previn told Eric Morecambe, as he was playing the piano, that he was playing the wrong notes. And Eric responded by saying that he was playing the right notes, just in the wrong order. And I think that probably sums up Bruce's time at St James's Park, if you ask me.
100%, definitely. Great stuff. Two great recollections there, Stephen. Not a diagram in sight.
No, I thought I'd keep that one later.
Stu, I've decided to be professional for the last 5 minutes of the show, so over to you.
Well, I'm not going to be, so leave it to you.
Okay, so if I had 11 Blur songs, what we're going to get next? Right. Everybody listen.
Well, right, what you'll have to guess. The name of the band will be quite easy, but you'll have to guess how many songs or count them as we go along. But Steve just did the first Newcastle game versus Burnley we ever played, and he did the most recent one as well, the first and last. So, right, my second game. So you ready to start counting? It wasn't on New Year's Day, but on the 3rd of October, 2020. As there were no fans allowed, I couldn't go with or without you. And to those who said no crowds were even better than the real thing, all I can say to you is walk on. At least the Burnley fans didn't have to suffer from the usual vertigo being in the top tier. It certainly wasn't a beautiful day, as the rain was falling constantly. However, it didn't stop us putting a top performance in. Only one of a few under a blood-red sky, you could say, we played. The first goal came from ASM when he drove at the heart of their defence. He twisted one way, then turned back, went the other way, and then he did crack it in the bottom corner. And because no one was at the game, you had to watch it on the TV, the camera flew went to the centre half, so they honestly looked like they'd been on a helter-skelter. So, would we return to our mysterious ways of not turning in decent performances at the points? Thankfully, we only had one moment of surrender, when after a bit of head tennis from a corner for Westwood to volley home to leave Bruce looking like he was sucking a lemon. And and their time and place. Is that a song? Yes, it is. And their time, another place. We could have been numb. However, we continued to play with pride and retook the lead. ASM showed great desire to beat his man and send in an inch-perfect cross for Wilson, not for the first time, to find the net. We could breathe more comfortably when Pope, who should have been good at crosses with that name, he misread the through ball, upended Fraser, and a penalty was given for Wilson to cruelly chip the ball down the middle. He deserved a hat-trick, but sometimes you can't make it on your own. Right, the sweetest thing about that game was it finished 3-1. And those of you know I like to back 3-1. And it was our last 3-1 win. And I'm still searching for our first win this season, let alone a first 3-1. So I still haven't found what I'm looking for. But maybe this Saturday we'll get what we deserve. There we go.
Oh my God.
Finished.
Does anybody want to try and guess just how many crammed in there? Because I lost count at about 10.
It's there. Look at all that.
Wow. Preparation.
22 was the answer. 22.
22.
Oh, unlucky Ian McKenna. He said 23. Unlucky, son.
Unlucky. It was 22.
Close but no cigar. Great stuff. Great recollections with a bit of humour chucked in. And as always, we finish the show off with a few guesses for the lads of players that played for both teams. So here we go, lads.
Paul Robinson.
Paul Robinson.
Went on loan to Burnley. Yes, second time he's featured in the last couple of weeks.
Gaza.
Gaza.
Paul Gascoigne, of course. Their one season, I think, in the back end of his career.
That's our coach.
Correct.
Our new coach.
Correct.
Which one?
Oh, what's he doing?
Joel. Is it Nicole Joel? Is it? Oh.
No. Sitting alongside Eddie Howe at Brighton.
He was.
Jason Tyndall.
Yeah.
Tyndall, that's what I was thinking of.
Well, he's got it. There's a piece about him in the Chronicle tonight.
That's Stephen Caldwell.
Stephen Caldwell.
Steve Caldwell.
Tommy Cassidy.
Tommy Cassidy. Well done. Rest are fairly easy, I think.
Oh,
Andy Cole.
Andy Cole.
Andy Cole, yeah.
Andy Cole.
Andy Cole.
He gets the ball.
Edgar.
David Edgar, yes. Chrissy Waddle.
Chris Waddle.
Jeff Hendrick.
Big Jeff.
Hendrick, yep.
Joey Barton.
Right, Joey Barton.
And the man at the moment.
Eddie Howe.
Eddie Howe.
Good luck with the goalkeeper.
Okay,
here's the celebrities.
Oh, Alistair
Campbell.
Yeah, Alistair Campbell. Big Burnley fan.
Big.
Jimmy Anderson.
Jimmy Anderson, the cricketer, of course.
Yep.
She's from Coronation Street. I don't know her name.
Julia Horwath.
Done, Steve. Played Claire Peacock in Coronation Street.
She was called Claire, yeah.
Ted Heath, yeah.
Ted Heath, obviously watching that 7-1 game there. Johnny Briggs.
Mike Baldwin.
Johnny
Briggs.
Johnny Briggs.
Mike Baldwin. Found this one a bit bizarre.
Prince Charles.
Apparently admitted being a Claret and Blue fan in 2012.
Oh, right. Came out, eh?
Now we're looking for
Chesney.
Sam Aston.
Yes. Sam Aston. Well done.
I don't watch Corrie Mind. I just done my research.
On the same website as me.
Yes.
Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, God knows. He recorded an album in Burnley, and that's how that connection's come about. And last one, easiest one of the lot, I think.
Oh, that's a kid from the jungle from last year, the DJ.
Gordon North.
Jordan North, exactly.
Jordan
and he
North.
was, Burnley, if you remember, was his happy place.
Yeah.
Okay, quick run around the board. Stu Penman, you're 1 to 11.
Right, thanks to Mr. Hasty, we managed to get a goalkeeper, Bobby Robinson. Then I've got Bradley Orr, Steve Caldwell, and Edgar in defence. It's a 3-6-1, really strange formation. Then I had Waddle, Gaza, Cassidy, Joey Barton, Hendrick, and Nolte in midfield with Andy Cole up front. And obviously, Mr. Eddie Howe is the manager.
Okay, Steve Hasty.
Right, obviously Robinson in goal, Edgar, Caldwell, and Orr. In defence, I had a midfield of Gascoigne, Barton, Tommy Cassidy, and I put Peter Noble in there. He was one of those players. He had no hair, and he had the Ralph Coates type comb over, if I'm right, but he ran and ran. And then up front, I had Chrissy Waddle, Andy Cole, and I think, did Peter Beardsley also go there for a short period of time? So I stuck Peter Beardsley in there, but I also stuck Jeff Hendrick on the bench, and I went for Eddie Howe as manager, and I gave Chrissy Waddle the assistant manager's role because he actually managed them as well, Chris Waddle, for a year.
Yeah, good stuff, Mitch.
Right, my keeper Richard didn't turn up, that keeper that Steve talked about, so I cheated. I went with a guy called George Jimmy Strong from the 1930s, who was born in Morpeth, never played a game for us, but did play quite a few games for Burnley in the war years. And then I've got a back three of Caldwell, Edgar, and Peter Haddock. And then a midfield five of Barton, Hendrick, Cassidy, Jeff Nolte, and Waddle. And then I've got Gaza floating free behind Andy Cole with Eddie Howe as the manager.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson.
Right, well, I've got a different goalkeeper. Kevin Carr was an apprentice at Burnley.
Oh, what a shout that is.
Never played for
done, that man.
And so defence, David, I've also got a guy called Jack Hill as a centre-half who played for Newcastle 1928-31.
20s,
and
yeah.
He became England captain, would you believe, as well after that. Jeff Nolte at the back, Stephen Caldwell. In midfield, Joey Barton, Gaza, Tommy Cassidy. I've also got Peter Noble in. He was actually on the picture that I think you showed earlier on when Supermax scored. I think he was on that picture because he actually played fullback when he went to Burnley, and he was playing in that game in the semi-finals. Also up front, Andy Cole and Chris Waddle, Eddie Howe manager.
Okay, and George, last but by no means least.
And I too found the Kevin Carr link for obvious reasons. Kevin Carr, Steve Caldwell, or then in front of them, Peter Noble, David Edgar, Jeff Nolte. For old time's sake, just because I like them, Joey Barton at 7, Andy Cole at Tommy Cassidy at 8, Andy Cole at 9, Gaza at 10, and Chris Waddle at 11. And when I looked at that team, I thought, well, they would give our current team a good run for their money, I'm afraid.
Funny, somebody mentioned that earlier on about the bad team that you put out at the start.
Yeah.
Probably give our team a run for their money as well.
Absolutely.
Great stuff in the crack, great crack in the chat as well. If you want to see the lads on screen again, the Three Amigos is back on Friday. We'll be live at 3:30 in the afternoon because obviously we've got the Christmas party, so 3:30 to 5:30. Join me, Steve Hasty, and Neil Mitchell as we. That hairstyle, I don't know what I look like on there. That's got to be another weird one from John the Jab. I do like it.
Like Ralph Iverson.
Have a look again. Steve, you've actually come off quite well there. I look like somebody out of the Monkeys. Mickey DeLenz, maybe.
Nice earrings on Mitch.
Yeah. Mitch looks like the woman out of Misery. I've got no idea. And well, that's 3:30 to 5:30 on Friday. And don't forget, Views from the Middle East is on Saturday at 11 o'clock. Lads, great stuff. get your thinking cap out for next week. It's a combined show because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty now of teams where we probably couldn't do a full show. So combined show next week of Oldham, Swindon and Blackpool.
All right.
Haven't we done Blackpool?
No,
I think we have, right?
No, we had a research. We had to talk about that. And that was said we're going to do those 3 shows. It's in the chat.
That's the game I drove back from Tenerife from Blackpool.
I've been going through the retro show anyway, the retro show chat, and that's what we agreed on, and nobody complained. So if we have done Blackpool, I can't find it on the show anymore. So we'll have to run through some stories, some Oldham and Swindon. If you feel like you've done a Blackpool show, you do Oldham and Swindon. Yeah, great stuff. All right, lads, good to see you. Take care and see you later.
Thanks a lot.
Right, everybody.
Cheers, everyone.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.